You know you said you were a bit short this week, Mum. Well, so's the man who stacks the shelves.
Cut your shopping bill in half with Safeway Savers.
Bring a little magic into your home with this new weekly publication. Learn all the latest tricks with paint, create stunning new effects with fabrics, win applause with brilliant accessories. We'll show you how to do everything with easy-to-follow step-by-step photographs and fact sheets to give you any extra help you need. This paint stamp, for decorating walls and all sorts of other things, is free with part 1 of Home Magic. Bring a little magic into your home tomorrow.
Welcome back. Kent police have been following up hundreds of phone calls after a television reconstruction of the attack which left Lynn Russell and her daughter Megan dead. 12 callers named the same man in connection with the murders, but police said tonight they were no nearer making an arrest. Our South of England correspondent Robert Hall reports.
This could be the face of a killer, the electronic image that has once again prompted vital help. Reconstructions of the Russell family's last movements, with reminders of a man and car seen nearby that afternoon, are still stirring memories. Among over 200 calls, 12 named a man from outside the area who is already known to police.
We are sifting through those calls. It's a bit difficult to tell at this stage exactly how useful they're going to be, but on first sight, I hope that it's going to give us vital information.
Teams fanning out through Kent now have new impetus.
I think when you have a crime as vicious and callous as this, that it can't help but have an effect on the people working on it.
50 officers are now assigned to this case. This latest TV appeal has produced fresh lines of inquiry, but senior officers admit progress is painfully slow. 7 weeks after these brutal murders, one clear description of the killer remains locked away. 9-year-old Josie Russell, who survived the attack, has not yet recovered full powers of speech. She is under constant protection.
Paul and I are preparing to interview Josephine at some stage, and we're working on that now, how the best way to do that. And we've got to take guidance from medical teams and our teams as well.
There's no doubt that her ability to communicate will improve beyond what it is. But as to how much she's actually going to improve verbally, I mean, that's something that it's almost impossible to say at this stage.
Tonight, trust and patience remain crucial to this inquiry. Robert Hall, News at 10.
Paul McCartney spoke about his wife's breast cancer today. He said Linda had made a full recovery and was doing incredibly well. McCartney said no life was perfect, but Linda had been luckier than most. Andrew Simmons reports.
Paul McCartney has spoken out about his wife's health after newspaper speculation that she'd suffered a relapse following surgery to remove a malignant tumour last December. Linda McCartney has made only rare public appearances since discovering she had breast cancer. 6 months after her operation, she wasn't with her ex-Beatle husband when the Queen opened his music school in Liverpool.
She's at home. It's a bit hectic, all this for her, yeah. But she's well. She's great.
Now, he says, she's made a good recovery.
God bless her, Linda's the most positive person on earth. She's fantastic, you know. And so she's really doing incredibly well. And all the doctors are amazingly pleased with her. There's nobody gets away with a perfect life, you know, and me and Linda have got to be doing better than most people.
The McCartneys, who married 27 years ago, are said to have one of the closest relationships in show business, successfully guarding their privacy and raising their 4 children out of the public limelight. Friends say the speculation about Linda's health won't have caused distress.
I think they got over worrying about the press, not only years, but decades ago. They've learned that what's important is how you cope on a personal basis, and they will have done so.
A vegetarian with her own name brand of frozen foods, she found out about her cancer after a routine scan. Amongst her many campaigns, she's been calling on all women over 50 to undergo screening for breast cancer. Andrew Simmons, News at 10.
The distribution of the controversial fruit-flavoured alcoholic drink Thickhead has been halted. Its manufacturers, Carlsberg Tetley, agreed to a temporary stoppage after regulators objected to the drink's labelling, which they thought would encourage underage drinking. New labels are being designed. The legal battle to secure the early release of prisoners serving consecutive sentences after a period on remand appears to be at an end. 2 High Court judges today refused permission for a test case to be taken to the House of Lords. And the stuntman Eddie Kidd is out of intensive care after being critically injured in a motorcycle jump last month. But he's still unconscious and doctors don't know whether he's suffered permanent brain damage. A new school year has begun with an old problem hitting the headlines, the problem of disruptive and violent children. In 2 cases this week, teachers have threatened to strike rather than have them in their classes. The Education Secretary Gillian Shepherd called that a pity today, but said the right balance had to be struck between the interests of the troublemaker and those of the rest. 12,000 children were permanently expelled from schools in England alone last year, some to go to other schools, some into so-called sin bins. But what's the long-term answer? Our Home Affairs correspondent Harry Smith has this special report.
Hazel Spence-Young is a victim of classroom violence. A teacher for nearly 20 years, she was forced into early retirement after a vicious attack by a 10-year-old boy.
I was kicked, thumped, punched, and with a constant stream of invective. And I caught hold of his hands and got him back into the classroom, where 2 other members of staff then saw what the problem was and helped to get me to the head teacher's study.
She's now permanently disabled with only limited use of the muscles in her neck and right arm. She's in constant need of painkillers. After 6 years legal wrangling, her education authority has agreed to pay £80,000 compensation. It's cases like that which have fueled teachers' anger. This week in Worksop, they threaten to strike if they're forced to teach 10-year-old Matthew Wilson, who they say is disruptive. In Halifax, there was a similar threat over 13-year-old Sarah Taylor. And earlier this year, Richard Wilding was forced to have lessons on his own after teachers refused to have him in their classrooms.
Teachers, along with everyone else, have every right to go about their business, free from intimidation, free from physical assault, free from serious disruption. Furthermore, I reject the notion that all children have a right to education at whatever school they choose or their parents choose, regardless of their behaviour.
Opinions are divided over whether pupils are becoming more violent or schools, under pressure to get good results, are now less tolerant of disruptive behaviour. Whatever the reason, more pupils are now being permanently excluded or expelled. In the year 1990 to 91, just under 3,000 were expelled from schools in England. That figure has been rising steadily. It passed 8,000 in 1993. The latest available figures are nearly 12,500. Pupils who are permanently excluded from school usually end up somewhere like this. This is a pupil referral unit. There are around 300 of them scattered throughout the country. The aim is to allow children to continue their education outside mainstream schooling.
Let's try that one, shall we?
At this referral unit in Wandsworth, they admit it's difficult to measure their success, but they do have pupils who've gone on to pass exams that were once assumed to be beyond them.
We are provided with the ability to spend more time with youngsters, creating a relationship which is right for teaching, and also provides an opportunity for the young person to look at some of the reasons why they were behaving in the way that they did, which may have led them to be permanently excluded.
But the leader of Wandsworth, which has one of the highest exclusion rates in the country, says the referral units can only deal with part of the problem.
We need to strengthen the role of the pupil referral unit. We need to treat it more as an agency, so it can look elsewhere. It can try and bring in other organisations who can help with particular problems.
The government has promised to look again at how schools expel pupils and what should then be done with them. It's expected to bring forward plans this autumn. Harry Smith, News at 10, Wandsworth.
Sports news now. In England's rugby union players threw the sport into turmoil today by agreeing to break away from their ruling body, the Rugby Football Union. In a dramatic development, they boycotted England's first training session of the season. Instead, they met representatives of the country's top 24 clubs who were locked in a bitter argument with the RFU over money. Ray Wilkins has resigned as Queen's Park Rangers player-manager after 2 years in the job. The club said tonight it was shocked by his decision. Former Arsenal manager George Graham is favourite to succeed him at Loftus Road. In the Premiership tonight, Chelsea snatched a draw in a thrilling match at Arsenal. A late goal from Ian Wright looked to have won the game for the Gunners before a last-minute equaliser from Dennis Wise. Manchester United's David Beckham scored against Derby to see his side salvage a draw for the 3rd game running. Les Ferdinand scored Newcastle's winner as they staged a second-half comeback to beat Sunderland. And another sending off for Vinnie Jones cast a shadow over Wimbledon's win over Spurs. The main headline again, President Clinton has said that the American mission against Iraq had now been accomplished. And finally, Punch, the magazine you always used to find in dentists' waiting rooms, is back this week, 4 years after it closed. Tonight, its backers and staff have been celebrating the old man's rebirth. Howard Jones reports.
A party for Mr. Punch tonight, champagne in the restaurant at Harrods. The men of letters there to welcome back an old friend. But the man who owns Harrods doesn't need to buy a copy of the new Punch. He's already bought the title for £500,000.
But it's a great magazine, one of the funniest magazines in the world, and I'm so happy that I'm reviving it back.
Punch was first published in 1841 and folded 4 years ago. But is the new version simply a rich man's plaything?
I don't know if it's a plaything. I think he thought he'd heard of Punch when he was a young man, he'd read Punch as a young man, and he thought he was sad like all of us were when Punch died.
Over at the magazine's arch rival, the editor is less than thrilled by Mr. Punch's comeback.
I think they've identified in the old days there was a problem with trying to be funny, and they're not being funny. And this time round, I gather, from what they say, they're just not going to try and be funny at all.
So this is the glossy new face of an old institution. When its predecessor closed, it had a circulation of about 32,000. Its new owners want at least 4 times that number of readers. But back from oblivion after 4 years, it's Mr. Punch who gets the last laugh. Howell Jones, News at 10, Central London.
Nice to see it back. That's the way the news looks tonight. We're back tomorrow. From all of us here at ITN, good night.
Hello, good evening. The weather is quite settled at the moment. There's no risk of heavy rain, no gales and no extreme temperatures. But there's still one aspect of the weather that's causing us problems, and that's just how much sunshine there'll be. It's going to be mostly dry, but quite large areas of cloud around like today, and so some sunshine is the best we can say, and it looks as if the west will probably see most of it. You can see on today's satellite picture at the time when the cloud is at its most broken, still some large areas of cloud around, but many people enjoying some sunshine, and that's likely to be the form of things for the next few days. So for tonight, well, many of those clear areas will fill in again overnight, so many eastern parts of Britain becoming overcast, spots of very light rain and drizzle in places, temperatures down to around 11 as you see there. Eastern parts of Northern Ireland rather grey and misty too. And then tomorrow will start pretty much like today did, a lot of low cloud around, still odd spots of drizzle, but a generally dry story. Some sunny spells already in the west through the morning, and as we go through the day, central and eastern areas looking a little brighter with 1 or 2 sunny spells around. Temperatures, again, rather like today, around 18 perhaps, but quite breezy in the south with strong northeasterly winds. Good night.
Sponsored by Powergen, generating electricity, whatever the weather.